Welcome to Business as a Magical Practice, where your business is the vehicle for your self-integration and soul evolution. My name is Sam Garcia, and I'm the founder of Dirty Alchemy Digital Marketing. And I'll be guiding you through how you can use your business as a spiritual practice and what magical businesses are doing to hit their goals and change the world. Together, we'll be relating the mystical to the world of business so that our work can unite spirit and matter, shadow and light, conscious and unconscious. Let's dive in. Yes, we are live. Hi, everyone. So welcome to our very first live recording of Business as a Magical Practice, the podcast. I am here in the Business as a Magical Practice Facebook group with acupuncture student and Africana studies scholar Camellia Dao-Ling for ethical abundance, welcoming prosperity without selling your soul. So thank you so much for being here, Camellia.
I'm so glad that I get to dive into this. I really feel excited in my spirit.
So Camelia's in Brazil. So we're actually going to do this. We're going to turn off our videos so that the internet is spot on. Her transmission doesn't get cut off. And you guys don't have to stare at a screen either. So we're going to just turn off our videos now. And I mean, I'm really just going to let Camellia, she was showing me her notes before we went live. And I'm like, holy moly, you guys, minds will be blown. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, I want to ground onto the name of the land I occupy. I am planting my feet on the soil of the Kayete people, Tupi-Ara people. I am the daughter of Nancy and William Songliang Lee. I am a learner, a Sagittarius sun. I want to greet my ancestors, the ancestors of this land, your ancestors, everyone's ancestors who are here, and give thanks and pay homage and ask for the words that need to come through me, and the ones that don't to not come through me. Yeah, there I am. And I'm so grateful. Do you want to center how we came to this moment, or how do you want to bring us in?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So basically in a previous podcast episode, I featured a woman who teaches about chakras, and Camellia emailed me afterward being like, why are you featuring this woman who is clearly using the modalities of an oppressed culture and not actually sharing that abundance with them, giving them the respect of their teachings. And it really put me in my place around this platform that we've created with this podcast, and me doing a better job at sharing specific voices and specific teachings. So Camellia is here to really talk about so many things. She'll be talking about so many things, but how we can actually the catalyst of this conversation was really around how can we as people who didn't grow up in a specific oppressed culture, but we may use modalities from that culture, how can we do that in an ethical way? And yeah, so that's really the catalyst here.
Yay! And I'm really honored because that was actually a super scary moment for me, that I thought a lot about maybe I shouldn't say anything, because it's such a curious experience being an Asian person. My dad is Taiwanese. Because a lot of times, at least my immigrant story is that we came here as immigrants. So we had a choice, unlike the native people whose land it is, whose land they tend, because they don't necessarily in many different cultures believe in owning land. But the land stewards have been here. And the people of the African diaspora coercively kidnapped here. My ancestors came here trying to escape, honestly, the civil war and violence in Asia that was happening, the Chinese Civil War. So we were quiet, right? came here a lot of times and we're just trying to make it to get by, and like where had this kind of like keep your head down, don't make any waves, and just like provide for your family, as just like that was the way that previous generations got through. And it's very like scary to say like, hey, you know what, I feel something. And so that was very much me like going against my socialization, and also knowing that a lot of times folks get really defensive and like and
Totally.
like take things personally, uh and it's an act of like, okay, well, I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect, I don't actually expect anyone to be perfect, but what I can do to make sure I am honoring the feelings that come up inside of me is to try to just like speak my truth with integrity and let go of the results. And then like your response was actually a really like lovely surprise, because I was like, this is just gonna blow up, but I'm just gonna say some things that I don't feel bad. I'm silencing myself. So I'm really grateful that it turned into this like beautiful moment to like share and heal and grow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I pretty much responded to your email like, yeah, you gave me a lot to think about. There's a and of how I need to move forward with this. And your response was, how about we just do a full on lesson on this? And I was like, great, let's do it.
Totally. And I think it's also like uh a systemic analysis. I'm a Sagittarius, so I love to zoom out. Like, it's so helpful for me because we, with a systemic understanding of systems of harm, then I think we get out of the fallacy of like villains and heroes, like good guy, bad guy, um, like one bad apple thing where like, oh, if I make a mistake, I must be like, I must be bad, and if I just like punish myself, then that'll help. Because I that's like the logic of the prison industrial complex, is that like one person is singularly responsible and needs to be punished, and that's going to fix things. And I haven't seen that make our societies any better as the prison populations have skyrocketed. Like that hasn't worked. And seeing like, oh wait, so we're socialized to um like take and extract whatever we want. Like that's a behavior that is that created the United States, of like, oh, this land is beautiful, it's awesome, I want it, here we go. Like that behavior has really deep roots and is rewarded and is foundational to a lot of the world systems that we live in. Then it makes us all have this shared obligation and shared process of unlearning, like on a daily basis, like brushing my teeth every day. I learn something. And if I like get out of like an egoic idea that I'm going to know everything, or that anyone else is going to know everything, then I can take myself less seriously, and I hope other people take themselves less seriously, and I'm less likely to be defensive. But it's still vulnerable. So I'm excited to, I hope, share some things that could like deal with the ways that the wellness industry and businesses in the sort of self-help spirituality sphere, how people show up and how we treat each other, which is so sacred, and to me as important as like whatever bottom line of, I don't know, of the accounting at the end of each quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And I come more from an environmental background than a social justice background. And of course they are intertwined and linked. But that's definitely been a big discussion around how can for-profit companies include these values within, like above the bottom line. It's not just about looking at, and which is interesting in a pretty much capitalist society where you're focusing on money, you're focusing on revenue, you're focused on profits. But how do we actually weave our values and implant integrity into it?
Uh, because like capitalism is a pretty new economic system in the sense of like if we look at our species, so many people have markets. So many different cultures have markets and centers of trade for millennia before Adam Smith. Um, and there's such a legacy um, of us recognizing that we are interdependent, that like the settled people have really awesome fruits and veggies grown from the land, but the traveling people bring maybe like wonderful metalware crafted by people from a place near a mine. And the exchange of what we can offer, that to me is very sacred. And um, reconnecting to exchange and trade as very like spiritual and ancient ways of being interdependent as our like animal kindred trade, like the trees give us fruit and then the monkeys eat it and then they defecate and that becomes fertilizer, and there is an exchange and the energy goes between different beings and all are enriched by that. That to me is very sacred, as a way to like approach the market, approach business, knowing that like I've felt weird about focusing so much on money when I really love the framework of abundance and prosperity, because then I can work with ancestral spirits. Like in Celtic traditions, like there's Bridget, there's all of these deities who help with harvest. And so setting an intention, oh, like may this project, please, I pray for us to have a really beautiful, wonderful harvest that feeds my home, that feeds my household. And the hunter entities of like, oh, as I am going forth and seeking like clients who I can work with where it would be mutually beneficial, please guide my intentions and help them find me. There's so many ways for us to exchange what is valuable, for everyone to have what they need, for me to recognize, oh, I have this to offer, I'm good at this and you're good at that. That isn't extractive. There are ways that are not extractive, that aren't exploitative, and they're very old and ancient and wonderful. And sometimes that means like money, and sometimes it's like my friend is like giving me Reiki in exchange for me helping her edit her dissertation. We're doing half of the exchange in money and half of the exchange in Reiki, because I want Reiki. I was looking for someone to give me Reiki, and I love like expanding my analysis of the inflow and outflow and value beyond just dollars. I also welcome, I say to both everybody who might listen and to the spirit world, I welcome money. If you want to send me $1,000, I will give you my Venmo. That would be great. But I also love other things,
Yeah. A few years ago, I read a book on regenerative, the regenerative economy, and how can we actually build businesses that are building a better future for like the concept of 7 generations forward, and the different industries that are actually already employing that, like including like the timber industry, and how do we actually build a timber industry that is regenerative versus this super extractive model. And I'm originally from Michigan, which like you look at the original white people settling in Michigan, they looked at these white pine forests and were like, saw it as this foreboding wild. And it was like a few decades in which it was completely clear cut down. So an industry that's typically so extractive can be reimagined in a way that is beneficial for all and beneficial for the future too. I didn't mean to go off track. I just you inspired me.
What I love though, it's because like it's an exchange. There's an energetic exchange. And I think it's very spiritual to be humble. Like all of my spiritual teachers really emphasize patience and humility and cooperation, except if there's like an overstep of like big boundaries or whatever. Like not just like taking it if someone is harmful, but in general, like we're supposed to be collaborating. That's what my spiritual teachers have always taught me. And that like the it it's the energetic exchange when like sometimes people have offered me to help like do graphic design for me in exchange for like a service that I offer. And I have actually abundance and prosperity in many ways, such that like I have some savings, I have a beautiful place to live. And then that to me makes me so wealthy and abundant that I can like exchange in non-monetary ways with someone who might not have capital. And then those who do can share it with me. And then I pay my bills that only accept the US dollar. And I love how the energy flows. Like it's a currency. It needs to be flowing and not stagnating. And that's something that I think about with the hoarding of wealth. Like I just see this beautiful energy, sunlight, you know, all the energy on our planet comes from our sun, our beautiful soul. I love that SOL, soul is the name of our sun. It's all transformed sunlight in some form. Literally, like dollar bills are made from trees, which takes the sunlight and photosynthesizes it. That sunlight getting stuck and like not and being clenched and like not shared when there's people who are hungry, that to me is like blocking the flow. And seems to demonstrate to me, I'm thinking of like billionaires who just give away pennies and are hoarding wealth. Like it seems to me to demonstrate such a poverty of spirit and such a sense of scarcity, like to have more than any human being could ever spend in a lifetime and still be accumulating more and feel like you can't share. Like that person must be so unfulfilled spiritually to have such a deep hole inside them that cannot be filled, you know?
And scooting back to you were saying about exchanging capital, I wanted to underline that I think we need to expand that definition just for this conversation, because there are different kinds of capital beyond financial capital. We have human capital, so like our actual hours and ability to work or produce different things. We have social capital, so our network that we have in place and the different help that we can call upon with from other people, other humans. We have natural capital, so the natural resources that we have access to, so important. Material capital, so the actual things that we have, whether those are tools or things for pleasure. Intellectual capital, the brilliance of our minds and the knowledge that we've acquired over time, and then spiritual capital, like those are resources that we can actually have. And I I've been thinking about a lot about the concept of capitalism recently, and how, because I've been hearing a lot of people saying that like capitalism is the reason everything has gone to shit. But if we expand this concept of what capital actually is, I don't think that has to be the case.
I'm over here like looking at the etymology right now. And expansion that of all of the different ways that we can think about our words. It looks like actually it from the early 13th century, of or pertaining to the head, so capital chief first, and
Mm.
the first rate powerful enough to be in the line of battle. Then there's this connection to the uppercase letter, um, a capital crime of offense. And then in 14th century, it had this sense of deadly and mortal.
Oh.
Um, and then stock or property, um, caput, head from Latin, um, which is head of a column or pillar. So that's curious to me because we have our spiritual center. A lot of modalities locate our spiritual center in the crown of our head, and that's why it's so meaningful a lot of the time when we touch our head to the earth, because it's such a profound humbling to touch the head of our spiritual center so close to the sky, to the invisible realms, and touch it to the earth. And I think for me, like, there's this wonderful scholar, I'm going to look it up who it is, but I believe his name is George, who came up with the term racial capitalism, because there's a way that the kind of capitalism that Cedric J. Robinson, okay, that the kind of capitalism that we have in the world today is very inextricably bound into white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and settler colonialism. And there's this extraction of like value from labor, from like literally from chattel slavery of human capital, those bodies, those living souls, having like life force just extracted, and also the land. So this was from 1983, Black Marxism, the making of the Black radical tradition. So like, I would love for us to find ways of honoring exchange and the market. And I want to look up the etymology of market, right? That aren't so extractive and that also have a recognition of like when to stop, like when is enough. Oh, okay, you know what? Like this beautiful plant this lavender plant gave me 3 beautiful pieces, which I'm going to dry and then I'm going to use for smoke cleansing, and I'm going to make some tea out of it. But I'm not going to take all of the flowers of the whole plant because that's too extractive. So a way of exchanging that knows when to stop, that would be beautiful to me, and honoring all those different beautiful, valuable sources of life force energy, the life force of our minds, of our spirits, of the land, and honoring that flow. I also like think of flow as such a beautiful co-creation phenomenon that happens when the currents are flowing and we are in alignment with them, like, when a kite catches the right wind, or like a windsurfer or a sail is like, oh, here we go, and then you just like flow across the water. That's the kind of like abundance that I'd like to be in alignment with, and yeah, where we're trading and sharing and exchanging, but not in a way that hurts each other and means that we can't trade anymore, that like is trying to make us obsolete,
Yeah, totally. And I'm wondering, just to pull us back to the original purpose of this conversation is, I would love to like look at how can we, like, gosh, I'm stumbling over words.
Mercury's still in Pisces, and Mercury's in detriment in Pisces, or fall. I think it's in fall.
I'm usually not affected by Mercury retrograde, but this Mercury in Pisces has been like kicking my ass. So looking at oppressed cultures, and if there are people in the audience who may be using different modalities, maybe we can, like, what are some examples of modalities that people may not even realize are from oppressed cultures, and what to do if they are using and teaching those?
Yeah. And definitely, I'm speaking from the position of a Taiwanese diaspora person, and definitely want to center that I can't speak for everybody. And, even within our communities, in some ways, I have a lot of privilege because I'm East Asian. Well, you know, Taiwan has indigenous people as well. So Taiwan is a little complicated, but um, there's so many different identities under the umbrella of Asian and Asian American and Pacific Islander. Um, but a lot of the breath work that folks like to practice, a lot of breath work and what we call like mindfulness nowadays has roots in Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism, of Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and they're so effective. Like, and they're so, I think even using the modern scientific method, like there's been really cool studies on the effects of breath work. Because we all are breathing. If you're listening to this, you're breathing. It's such an incredible tool. And yet also like often the roots are in Asian lineage traditions that are deeply religious and cultural and spiritual, and they work. Like there are many elders who will say, you know, medicine is medicine. They work because on a spiritual and also like physical level, we are so extremely similar. Like our species shares most of our DNA with our primate kin. Like, of course, like it really does work on everybody because we create a lot of our differences in our heads. So they're going to have incredible healing effects on everybody, and that's awesome. That's fabulous. But because we human beings tend to hurt each other and have this really horrible pattern over the past kind of several centuries of exploiting each other, particularly brutally. You know, these past weeks, this really since the beginning of the pandemic, there's been such an uptick in violent attacks on people read as Asian, even though like a lot of it comes from 45, you know, calling it the China flu or whatever. Filipino people and Southeast Asian, Vietnamese people are, a lot of our elders have been attacked, just because for white supremacists, like we all look the same. And so I think a pain point for a lot of the Pacific Islander and Asian people I know has been feeling like, wow, you know what, our ancestral healing modalities are so popular, but where are folks? Why isn't everybody who has ever like loved Chinese food and meditation, why aren't all of those people like protecting our elders? And where are y'all? Because we don't have the option of like taking off our skin, right? Our elders can't change how they look, and it's even tragic because people try. Like the epicanthic fold eye surgery is so popular because people like want to look European, and yet like if we can't escape our bodies, but people can take the pretty parts of our culture without having to worry about leaving the house, there's a very deep sense of injustice. So I would say like breath work, Tai Chi, Qigong, Tantra. Oh, here's one. You know those like fun facial rollers that are like crystal? I love them. I have one. Like they're so cute. But they come from gua sha. So the stone massage is a practice from East Asia. And I think that's one that like even I was surprised. I was like, oh my gosh, my people did that. That's so cool. And oh my gosh, the jade eggs. So like they I think they should be jade, right? Because it's a Taoist practice and Chinese people love jade. Jade is very sacred. I love rose quartz too, but I don't think that it was a thing. I think people just use jade. But it's like a Taoist yoni practice. And that comes from Asian people, you know? And then obviously like tantra, yoga, um, but those are the ones that I think are not as like connected in people's heads to being like, oh yeah, that's from Chinese people, you know?
Yeah. So what do people do if they like they got into yoga or any of these practices and they were totally transformed by it. They're now devoting their working hours to talking about it and teaching it, and they went through the trainings and all of the things. How how can they actually do that in a way that is honoring the culture that it came from? Or what would you say to those people?
Yeah. So again, like medicine is medicine. Um I come from a lot of spiritual traditions that believe in reincarnation. And so yeah, like I often think it's something that I feel or see when I'm in acupuncture school and there's someone who like this incarnation is like Russian, but is so just good at it, good at acupuncture. I'm like, wow, like I feel like I can see you like a couple lifetimes ago in South China. And also this time around, like you don't have to worry about like the anti-Asian racism. And that is also present. So I think about this a lot and I don't have a final answer, but some of the main checkpoints that come to mind are one, is this a mishmash or is there a lineage, right? Like if someone is talking about chakras and like Zen Buddhism in the same sentence, that is a red flag for me because chakras come from Hinduism in South Asia and Zen is a form of Buddhism that is in Korea and Japan. And those are very far away and extremely different cultures. So any kind of mishmash, that to me just evokes like the culture buffet and someone just like plopping servings of a bunch of different things that all look good and then consuming them. So like really going deep in one modality, that to me is one starting place to really be honorable. And in that process to put in the time, impatience and just wanting quick results is very, to me that's a very ego response and attitude. And again, like humility and patience are such key spiritual precepts. Um, and I mean, I'm 7 or 8 years into like a 20-year like priesthood training process, and it's so slow and also worth it because my teacher's like, how can you help anyone if you don't have life experience? And if you haven't, how do you propose to like lead if you have never like followed? So taking time to go deep with someone who is a lineage bearer and really honoring them, paying them well, or doing another exchange, the old like chop wood, carry water adage, really putting in time and heart and service to build a meaningful relationship. So much, I think, is about healing relationships and there being reciprocity and goodwill that's cultivated over time rather than the quick like cha-ching, oh cool, like I spent a weekend here and now I can go forth and never return again and never talk to that teacher again. And then getting permission to share. So like one modality, learn from someone who is a lineage bearer, make sure they're cool with it and they're like, yes, you know what, you're good to go. And that's a really big deal. I really care about that. The missing piece that I see for people who have done those 3 checkpoints is the return of resources. And that to me is really key. I invite folks who are white acupuncturists to be regularly contributing to like the Chinatown community for equitable development because the elders are often getting like displaced by gentrification, um, to all of the organizations that are trying to protect our elders, because even when there has been this beautiful building of meaningful relationship, there is the fundamental power imbalance of being able to access the benefits and the beautiful parts of a culture without facing the violence that people in bodies marked by racism face. So, like a regular tithe to me is kind of the missing piece that I see um, in ethical engagement, along with citing sources, um, naming who we learned from, and again, staying in relationship with them, not letting this like elder, um, once they can't work anymore, if they're an elder lineage bearer, like we need to take care of them. They need to, we need to bring them groceries. There's a deep, there's a care that is really central, and at least in every Asian culture I know, there's this incredible reverence for our elders. That is very sacred, where we take care of them and we remember them and we feed them and we listen to them, and we cite them. And then the other two things I thought of were, so return resources, cite sources after one has done the study and gotten permission, and then choosing an accomplice role and passing the mic. So for an accomplice role, I mean getting upstander or bystander training, so that I mean, we have these videos going viral of people attacking racialized folks, of attacking elders, and it's like, why were you? I think, why were you filming and not intervening? Unless unless the person filming is themselves a vulnerable population. But like an accomplice role for me would be, say, like a white guy who's an acupuncturist, like offering to walk elders home from the grocery store or bring food to their homes, and walk them to the grocery store, and if someone steps to them, like physically get in the way, and be in the middle and protect people with the way that like authority figures tend to respond to white bodies. Like during the really important Black Lives Matter protests and other Black freedom protests, like I saw these videos of white accomplices going to the front of the protest, and the energetic shift of the police was incredible. Like things quieted down, and there was just a totally different energy. So like choosing to use one's privilege and positionality to interrupt the dangers that people face, and then passing the mic is like being willing to share opportunities. So if there's like a conference, and then like we look at the docket and like, there's nobody here at this yoga conference who is South Asian, and I'm being offered X number of dollars to present. Who do I know who like could really use this opportunity? Who probably didn't get offered it because of their identity. Let me say, you know what? No, thank you. Why don't you contact so and so? So those are the main. I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seven's a beautiful number, a very sacred number. So those are the 7 things that I would ask someone to think about.
That's amazing. Okay, so just to recap, to make sure I picked up all of them as separate ones. To make sure it's focus on the lineage, not doing this mishmash cultural buffet. Putting in that's a starting point. But then going deep with the lineage bearer and actually paying them or exchanging with them well. Getting permission to share from them once you've actually gone through that training. There being a return of resources that you are in your life, you're going back into the elders of the community, of the lineage that you're sharing, and actually giving back to them. So that regular tithe. We have citing sources, choosing an accomplice role, and then passing the mic. So I got 6. What am I missing?
Then, so mishmash, deep study, permission, return resources, cite sources, accomplice role, and pass the mic.
Okay, the mishmash was one I wasn't counting.
Yes.
Perfect. That's amazing. Thank you so much. That feels very thorough.
Yeah, it's such a like it's also so meaningful to like take time, I think, and then also I love inviting folks to go back into our own ancestries because often it's really painful, right? To um to go to our own ancestries because I don't know anyone whose family is free of dysfunction, and there's we're human, so there's usually some family drama. But there's an incredible magic in also really getting to know one's own ancient folkways and modalities because our ancestors got here somehow. Like every culture I know of has a medicine person, a shaman, um, a wonderful green witch. Everyone has herbalists, diviners, and special ways to keep nightmares away. And they get lost or they get deliberately forgotten often. Um, and that's a big part of the social construct of whiteness is like giving up the specific identity of, oh, I'm from the McDermott clan of County Cavan, and we are blacksmiths, and we are really good at honoring the goddess Bridget. Like, there are ancient European folk traditions as well that are really sacred and beautiful that, when reclaimed, are incredibly powerful. And that also restored lineage connection can be an incredible medicine that serves generations to come when we realize that we aren't lacking and we don't need to go, oh, I don't have a culture and so like I need to go to someone else's. Like the idea that like we don't have magic is everyone has magic. Magic is another word for like being alive. It's working with life force, and everyone has had to do that in order to survive. So, in addition to like ethical engagement with other cultures, I always want to invite folks to like look back. And I'm a Sagittarius, so like zoom way out, go back 2,000 years. Like time is also a social construct. Like there's a lot of physicists who believe in the block universe theory that all of the times are co-present. They're just at different points on the space-time continuum. So just like get into meditation and wow, like the Celts were doing some pretty cool stuff, and so were the Hungarians. Like I love when we remember that all of us have magic and we don't need to go wandering necessarily from a place of lack.
What have you found when you've looked back on your Taiwanese ancestry?
Yeah, it's so funny the way that like language barriers show up because for example, I think my great uncle, yes, my grandfather's half brother was going over our family tree and was like, yeah, so this guy was a boogeyman. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, and I feel like that was probably like an exorcist village medicine man. That's my sense. And that's what I connect to. And then also like, my dad is a PhD, his dad was a doctor, his dad was a doctor. And they were trained in like Western medicine. But it's very meaningful to me to go to acupuncture school because like they were socialized by the rise of the US at the end of World War II when Europe and Japan, which is very close to Taiwan, were both in shambles. And right after World War II, pretty much like China went into like a civil war with the communists and the nationalists. So my family was like, well, I don't know, like the US seems to not be in shambles. Let's try to go over there. And there's been this big valorization of the West, of the US, and this internalization that Chinese culture was inferior. So me negating that and saying, no, it's actually beautiful and it's awesome. And I want to learn the herbs and the meridians and I want to learn the remedies. That is a way that I go back. And also a way that I try to practice what I preach, because it's hard. Like it would be easier for me to go like train in a modality where I don't have baggage around it,
Mm.
where I like don't have a lineage connection. But I feel like for me, spirit always rewards me when I do things that do have some challenges involved. And then it makes like every breakthrough really meaningful, because I didn't try to avoid work. I didn't try to just have the experiences that as humans we really like of, oh, that was easy, that was pleasurable, but that I was willing to like go forth towards what is sometimes rocky, but like has a really beautiful view when you like reach the summit.
That's beautiful. So the audience here are magical business owners, mainly in the online space. And I'm curious for those of us who don't that aren't necessarily healers of a specific modality, but are still obviously heart centered and want to see change in the world. Do you have any specific recommendations around, like, if we don't have this specific modality, a specific lineage that we want to honor? What are other ways that we can really bring ethics and values and integrity into our businesses?
Yay! Yes, because we can all do it. So many wonderful things. The first is grounding. I love that every meditation I've always done is in like connect to the earth. So, right, like knowing whose land we occupy, and naming that. And usually, unfortunately, the original people of whatever land we occupy are still fighting. And so, like when I am on the Tongva land, that is now called Los Angeles, I try to be regularly contributing to their campaign to protect their sacred sites, because Long Beach, CSU Long Beach, is trying to build a parking lot there. So, and that I think is particularly key, because everything we have comes from Earth. Like, and it's also the site where the ancestors of the land still are. If we eat locally, then we are eating from the land where the ancestors are buried. Like it is feeding us in a very literal and sacred, profound way. And that's why I also think it's very meaningful to protect the native species of the land, and be like, in California, like not having a lawn, but planting local drought resistant plants, because those plants are coming out of the soil where the ancestors of the land are buried. So it's like the ancestors are in those plants in a very sacred way. And then also, this is kind of like North America and South America centered, because I'm in South America right now. And I think a lot of folks who listen are probably in North America, where the entire like economy was founded on chattel slavery. So anti-Blackness, treating people of African descent as exploitable labor, as not human. And so it's really easy. You can just subscribe to people's Patreon. I never know how to say it, but like a regular Patreon contribution, or like every paycheck. I honor my grandfather, who is actually Irish Catholic, who talked about tithing. Tithe is a tenth. So like a tenth of any money that comes to me, I send back out, whether that's to like a Black or a Native organization or person. And I always have enough. I never lack when I do that. So honoring first, like the foundation, who are the land stewards, and then the fact that the economy of the U.S. is based on chattel slavery, so paying Black folks, and always considering, like, can I offer a sliding scale? Can I find ways to trade services for people? And considering, oh, is this accessible? Do I have ASL translation? Do I have captions? Um, and also thinking about all of our relations, which is a phrase I hear a lot of our native folks saying, like, how am I treating myself? How am I treating a contractor or employee or collaborator? What is the process of our relationship? Am I just like emailing them with a bunch of things to do? Am I checking in to see, wait, so how are you doing? Like, am I treating other humans like humans or like um, a meal ticket? And checking in on all of our relationships, because the extractive attitude that like only profit matters and like that caring for our relationships isn't efficient, that that cheapens, actually, I think, the quality of our lives. So tending to our relationships, making sure we're paying the land stewards, honoring honoring the people of African descent whose labor created, literally built so many structures on in the United States and throughout the Americas, and considering who isn't at the table and why might they not be at the table, because again, like, it's very vulnerable and sometimes scary and sometimes dangerous. One could lose resources to speak up about like unfair or exploitative dynamics. And so proactively thinking about, like, oh, okay, nobody who's deaf has ever come to my events, but I also like don't have sign language, so maybe they just assume I don't think about deaf or hard of hearing people. um and just wondering who has a seat at the table, and then taking time to do constant unlearning and re-education work. I really love, for white folks, showing up for racial justice has all these awesome trainings and ways to mobilize, because um, European diaspora folks are also part of this planet and are very needed. And it's easier to do change. It's easier to mobilize and affect outcomes that we long for when we work together. So all of those practices, I think, are really sacred, and are good starting points. Yeah.
That is so useful. Thank you so much for all of that. A lot of points that we can all look at within our businesses. Mm.
There's so much to go into. I love talking about all of this, and we already are like almost at an hour.
I know you prepared a bunch of talking points and notes. Is there anything that we didn't get to that you would love to quickly dive into before the end of the hour?
Yes, the sacredness of the mundane.
Mm.
Because, like, I think sometimes when we go into cultural appropriation, there's what I feel like business people will call like the scarcity mentality, a sense of like acting from pain, acting from lack, acting from fear, and thinking that the cure or the answer is somewhere outside of us, in something that we can buy, something we can take, and that someone else has it, but we don't. A lot of times comparing our insides to other people's outsides. And there's something that's so sacred and simple in just like, um, with a lot of intention, doing very simple things with great love. So, like, not even having, 20 different crystals and then spending like 3 hours chanting, but sweeping the house with love in one's heart, and praying that all of the negativity is brushed away. Like, that to me is often like more effective. And it's also not appropriative. Like, a lot of times when I think people appropriate other cultures, there's again, there's the fear and there's the pain and the sense of lack within. And also there's a lot of projections that go onto the outside of like, oh, this is exotic. This is different. This is beautiful. This is complex. Maybe this will make me feel better. Maybe this is the answer. When, again, like we can just like putting my hand on my heart and breathing and like feeling my feet on the earth and spending like 3 minutes doing that, deeply dropped in, is so powerful. And above all, like doing small things with a lot of love and thinking of all of our relationships, both with humans and with non-humans, and trying to fulfill our highest potential one day at a time, imperfectly, but with a lot of love and like sincerity, and letting go of the results, and then like cleaning up our messes because we're gonna make mistakes, and just trying to build a legacy that leaves this planet more just and loving than when we landed here. That to me is like the most sacred way of living, and it doesn't need to be complicated. You don't have to pay like 20 grand or go to another country. And it's always right where we are. So that's I think the most important thing I wanted to leave us with.
That's so beautiful. And the Gemini rising in me is like, I can't believe you just said that. That just wants to learn more. So Camellia, how can people go deeper with you?
Yay! Yes, I would love that. Again, money isn't the only thing, but I love money. Money is my very good friend. It's always welcome to visit at my house. So I do, I teach Qigong, which is so much fun, and we move our bodies, and anybody can do it. You can do it sitting down. We can make modifications. And I have a website. I'll link it because my name is beautiful and people don't always know how to spell it, but I do Qigong. I do one-on-one ancestral guide sessions. I have courses for ancestral healing that work with critical race theory and Taoism and inner child work. And I do energy healing, which in the Ni family, to name Huaqing Ni, my lineage bearer, that family calls it infinity, like infinity. And all of that is at my website, or my Instagram also has my website, which is @_whole, like complete, soul, like the spirit.
So beautiful. And is the best place for people to find you online, your website and your Instagram?
Yeah, I think so. I love my website because I intentionally like pray on it a lot, and like I have a shrine, and I want it to be somewhere where you come and you feel like, oh, I belong. I am home. So it's my little ethereal altar in the hyperspace lane.
And that's CameliaDao-Ling.com.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to link that in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast, or if you're watching the Facebook Live in the Facebook group, it'll be in the post content. And definitely check out Camellia and reach out to her on Instagram, all the places. Thank you so much. This was so beneficial for everyone who's listening.
I'm so glad to be of service. You know, I'm a Virgo rising, and so it makes me happy. Which also means I think we're Mercury twins. Like both Gemini and Virgo are children of Mercury.
Well, I'm a Virgo, Sun, Mercury, and Venus. So
I love it. Thank you, everyone who's been present, and thank you, Sam, and thank you to our ancestors, and thank you to the land. Thank you to all of the spirit team that is present. And I hope that this reaches who it needs to reach. And if I said something in a way that didn't help, please intervene and reframe it so that the people who hear it hear what I meant. Amen.
Amen.